The phone rang at 2:47 in the afternoon while I was sitting on the terrace of the Hotel Meurice in Paris, watching tourists take photos of the Eiffel Tower in the distance. I'd been in France for exactly 4 days, the first real vacation I'd taken in 6 years of working 80-hour weeks for Garrison Technologies. My wife Elena was inside the suite, video chatting with her sister about some baby shower drama, and I was enjoying a glass of Bordeaux that cost more than I used to make in a day back when I started at the company. When I saw Richard Garrison's name flash across the screen, my first instinct was to ignore it. But Richard wasn't the type of man you ignored, especially when you were married to his daughter and worked as his vice president of operations. So I answered. "Brandon," Richard's voice came through sharp and cold, the way it always did when he was about to destroy someone's day. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I took a sip of my wine, watching a street performer juggle fire batons below. "I'm in Paris, Richard, on the vacation you approved 3 months ago. Remember? You signed the papers yourself." I approved a long weekend, not a full week gallivanting around Europe while the Singapore deal is falling apart. The Singapore deal. I'd spent 9 months building that partnership from scratch, traveling back and forth between Seattle and Asia so many times I could navigate Changi Airport blindfolded. 2 weeks before my scheduled vacation, I'd finalized every detail, signed every contract, and handed off the implementation to my team with documentation so thorough a first-year MBA student could execute it. The Singapore deal is fine, Richard. I left Marcus in charge, and he's more than capable. Marcus is an idiot who just lost us $12 million because he didn't understand the payment structure you supposedly documented. I sat up straighter. That wasn't possible. I'd walked Marcus through every scenario, every contingency. What happened? What happened is you abandoned your post to go drink wine in France while the company I built falls apart. That's what happened. My jaw tightened. 6 years. 6 years of missing birthdays, anniversaries, weekend barbecues with friends. 6 years of putting Garrison Technologies before everything else, including my marriage. Elena and I had been trying to start a family for 2 years, but between my schedule and the stress, it hadn't happened. This trip was supposed to be about us, about remembering why we got married in the first place. Richard, I documented everything. If Marcus made a mistake, it's not because I didn't prepare him. You're fired, Brandon. Clean out your desk when you get back. We don't need a lazy pig who thinks he can coast on past accomplishments while the real work happens without him. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long moment, watching the screen go dark. Then I did something that surprised even me. I laughed, actually laughed out loud, startling a couple at the next table. "Everything okay?" a voice said from my left. I turned to see a man in his mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit jacket draped over the chair beside him, watching me with amusement. He'd been sitting there when I arrived, working on his laptop while nursing an espresso. "Just got fired by my father-in-law for taking a vacation," I said, raising my glass. "First one in 6 years. The man smiled, a knowing expression crossing his face. "Richard Garrison, I'm guessing?" I froze. "You know Richard?" "Know him? I've been trying to put him out of business for the last decade." He extended his hand. "Daniel Kerrigan, Kerrigan Industries." The name hit me like cold water. Kerrigan Industries was Garrison Technologies' biggest competitor, a company that had been steadily eating away at our market share for years. Daniel Kerrigan was legendary in the industry, known for treating his employees like family while somehow maintaining cutthroat business practices. "Brandon Mitchell," I said, shaking his hand. "I know who you are," Daniel said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. "The Singapore deal everyone's been talking about. Brilliant work, by the way. I tried to poach you twice in the last 2 years, but Richard blocked both attempts." I moved to the chair, my mind racing. How did he block them? Threatened to sue for breach of non-compete, claimed you'd signed contracts that would tie you up in legal battles for years if you left. My lawyer said it would be more trouble than it was worth. Daniel leaned back, studying me. "But if you just got fired, those contracts are void." The pieces started falling into place. Richard hadn't just fired me out of anger. He'd done it because he knew I was becoming too valuable, too knowledgeable about the company's operations. By firing me, he thought he was cutting me loose before I realized what I was worth to competitors. "The Singapore deal didn't fall apart, did it?" I said slowly. Daniel smiled. Marcus probably made some minor mistake that cost the company a few hours of work. Richard's known for exaggerating disasters to justify his decisions. Makes him feel powerful. He wanted me gone. He wanted you dependent on him. As long as you were married to his daughter and working under his thumb, he controlled your career, your income, your future. But you were getting too good, too independent. Firing you while you're on vacation makes you look bad to Elena, makes him look like the responsible one dealing with a crisis. I thought about the last 6 years, about all the times Richard had praised my work in public, while subtly undermining my confidence in private. The way he'd always found reasons why I couldn't get equity in the company, couldn't bring in outside investors for projects I'd developed, couldn't take on titles that would give me real authority. "What are you doing in Paris?" I asked Daniel. "Scouting a potential acquisition. Small tech firm in Lyon that's developed software I'm interested in. But mostly I'm enjoying the city. I try to take at least 6 weeks of vacation a year. Life's too short to spend it all in boardrooms." 6 weeks. I'd taken 4 days in 6 years. Mr. Kerrigan, Daniel. Daniel, hypothetically, if someone had just been fired by Garrison Technologies and suddenly had no non-compete restrictions, what would a company like Kerrigan Industries be willing to offer them? Daniel pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed me the screen. The number made my wine glass shake in my hand. "That's the base salary," Daniel said, "plus equity, performance bonuses, and a contract that guarantees you can't be fired without cause. Also, 6 weeks paid vacation per year. Mandatory. I don't want burned-out executives. I want people who know how to live." I looked at the number again. It was almost 3 times what Richard had been paying me. "There's one condition," Daniel added. "You bring me the Singapore deal. Transfer the contracts to Kerrigan Industries. Richard violated those agreements the moment he fired you, since you're listed as the primary contact. The clients will follow you." It was ruthless. It was exactly the kind of thing Richard would do if positions were reversed, and it would destroy half of Garrison Technologies' projected revenue for the next year. "When do you need an answer?" "How long are you in Paris?" 3 more days. "Enjoy your vacation, Brandon. We can talk contracts when you get back to Seattle." Daniel stood up, leaving cash on the table for his espresso. "Oh, and Brandon? Richard made a mistake firing you before you got home. If he'd waited, he could have spun the narrative better. But doing it while you're on vacation, especially one he approved, that's grounds for wrongful termination. Document everything. You're going to need it." After Daniel left, I sat on that terrace for another hour, watching the sun set over Paris while I thought about the future. Elena came out eventually, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "Who was on the phone?" she asked. "Your father. He fired me." Elena went rigid. "What?" "Said the Singapore deal fell apart because I took a vacation. Called me a lazy pig and hung up." My wife pulled away, her face going through about 12 different emotions in 3 seconds. "Brandon, I'm so sorry. Dad can be intense, but I'm sure if we just talk to him when we get back." "I don't want to talk to him, Elena. I'm done." "Done? What does that mean?" I turned to look at her, really look at her. Elena was beautiful, smart, accomplished in her own right as a corporate lawyer, but she was also her father's daughter, raised to believe that Richard Garrison's way was the only way, that loyalty to family meant accepting whatever Richard decided. "It means I spent 6 years sacrificing everything for a man who never respected me. 6 years. Missing our life together because I thought if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, he'd finally see me as an equal instead of the guy who married his daughter." "Brandon, that's not fair." "Isn't it? When was the last time we had dinner together on a weeknight? When was the last time I made it to your office holiday party? Hell, when was the last time we had sex without me falling asleep halfway through because I was exhausted from another 18-hour day?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I know it's been hard, but Dad's company is our future. Once you make partner—" "I was never going to make partner, Elena. Your father made sure of that." The truth hung between us like smoke. Elena wanted to argue. I could see it in her face, but she couldn't, because deep down, she knew I was right. We spent the rest of our vacation in a strange kind of limbo. Elena kept trying to call her father, but Richard wasn't answering her calls any more than he was answering mine. We went through the motions of sightseeing, but the magic was gone, replaced by a tension that made every conversation feel like walking through a minefield. On our last night in Paris, Elena finally broke down. "What are you going to do?" she asked over dinner at a small bistro in the Marais. I've got offers. Multiple companies have tried to recruit me over the years. Now that I'm not under contract with your father, I can actually take them. What kind of offers? I told her about Daniel Kerrigan, about the salary, the equity, the vacation time. I left out the part about taking the Singapore deal. That conversation could wait. Elena was quiet for a long time. Dad will never forgive you if you go work for Kerrigan. I don't need his forgiveness. I do, Brandon. He's my father. I can't just cut him out of my life because you two had a fight. This wasn't a fight, Elena. He fired me on vacation for taking time off he approved. That's not a fight, that's abuse. Don't be dramatic. You want to talk about dramatic? Your father called me a lazy pig. After 6 years of 80-hour weeks, after missing your mother's funeral because I was closing a deal in Tokyo that Richard said couldn't wait, after canceling our anniversary trip 3 years in a row because the company needed me. I gave him everything and he threw me away like garbage the first moment I tried to take something for myself. Elena was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. What do you want me to say? I want you to be on my side for once. I want you to acknowledge that your father was wrong. He's under a lot of stress. Stop making excuses for him. I threw my napkin on the table, suddenly too angry to sit still. You've been making excuses for him our entire marriage. Every missed dinner, every broken promise, every time he treats me like I'm not good enough. You always defend him. He's my father, Brandon. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to be my wife first. The flight home was silent. Elena sat in her seat reading a book while I stared out the window, watching clouds pass below and thinking about everything that had changed in one phone call. By the time we landed in Seattle, I'd made my decision. The house was exactly as we'd left it, mail piled up by the door, that stale air smell of a place that's been empty for a week. Elena went straight upstairs to unpack. I went to my home office and pulled out my laptop. The email to Daniel Kerrigan took me 20 minutes to write. I outlined everything I knew about Garrison Technologies' operations, including which clients were unhappy with recent service changes, which contracts were up for renewal in the next 6 months, and which projects were hemorrhaging money despite Richard's claims of profitability. The Singapore deal was the crown jewel. I'd structured it specifically so that the contract followed the primary representative, not the company. Standard practice in international agreements, designed to prevent exactly what Richard had done, abandoning projects midstream by firing key personnel. I copied all my documentation to a secure drive, encrypted it, and sent the access codes to Daniel's private email. Then I started drafting my wrongful termination claim. Elena found me 3 hours later, still at my desk, surrounded by papers. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice small. "Protecting myself. Your father's going to try to destroy me. I need to be ready." "Brandon, you're being paranoid." My phone rang. Richard Garrison. I put it on speaker. "Brandon, we need to talk." Richard's voice was different now, concerned instead of angry. "I may have been hasty yesterday. You fired me, Richard. There's nothing hasty about that. I was upset about the Singapore situation, but I've spoken with Marcus, and I realize now that the mistake was on his end, not yours. Come back to the office Monday. We'll work something out." I looked at Elena, saw the hope in her eyes, and felt something inside me harden. "No." "Excuse me?" I said no. "You fired me, Richard. I'm moving on." "Moving on where? No one in this industry is going to hire you after I'm done. Kerrigan Industries already made me an offer. Triple my old salary, equity, and actual vacation time." The silence on the other end was deafening. When Richard spoke again, his voice was pure venom. "You go work for Daniel Kerrigan, and I'll make sure you never work in technology again. I'll sue you for breach of contract, for theft of trade secrets, for anything I can think of." "Sue away. Your contracts are void the moment you terminated me without cause, and my lawyers are going to have a field day with the wrongful termination claim, especially since you fired me during an approved vacation." "You ungrateful little—" "I'm done, Richard. Enjoy explaining to your board why you lost the Singapore deal." I hung up. Elena was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "You took the Singapore deal. The clients are following me to Kerrigan. Richard violated the contract terms by firing the primary representative mid-implementation. That's my father's company, Brandon. That deal was supposed to fund expansion into Southeast Asia. Your father's company fired me while I was on vacation after 6 years of loyal service. He made his choice. So you're destroying his business to get revenge? I'm protecting my career. There's a difference. Elena grabbed her purse from the counter. I need to go talk to him. Elena, don't. You're asking me to choose between you and my father. I need to hear his side. She left before I could argue. The house felt bigger after she was gone, emptier in a way that had nothing to do with square footage. I didn't hear from Elena for 3 days. Her father's lawyers sent me a cease and desist, threatening legal action if I move forward with Kerrigan Industries. My lawyers sent back a response that was essentially a legal middle finger, citing precedent after precedent of wrongful termination cases that had ended badly for the employer. Daniel Kerrigan called personally to welcome me to the team. I heard Richard's losing his mind. Apparently, he called an emergency board meeting and tried to claim you stole proprietary information. Did it work? The board asked him why he fired the person responsible for their most profitable deal of the year. He couldn't give them a good answer. 3 board members have already reached out to me privately about joining Kerrigan if Richard keeps making erratic decisions. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. Elena came home on Thursday evening. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. I talked to my father, she said, dropping her bags by the door. And? He's convinced you planned this whole thing, that you manipulated him into firing you so you could take the Singapore deal to Kerrigan without breaching your contract. That's insane, is it? Because from where he's sitting, it looks like you got exactly what you wanted, a new job with better pay and revenge on the man you've always resented. I stood up from the couch. I resented him? Elena, your father has treated me like an employee who happened to marry his daughter for 6 years. I was never family to him. I was convenient labor he could control. He gave you a job when you were nobody. I made him millions of dollars. Don't act like he was doing charity work. Elena's face crumpled. I don't know how to do this, Brandon. I don't know how to be your wife when you're destroying my father. I'm not destroying your father. I'm building my own career. It's the same thing to him, and it's the same thing to me. The words hung in the air between us. Finally, I understood. Elena wasn't ever going to choose me over Richard. Not really. She'd been raised to believe that family loyalty meant absolute allegiance to her father, and I was asking her to betray everything she'd been taught since childhood. So what do we do? I asked quietly. I don't know. That Monday, I started at Kerrigan Industries. The office was different from Garrison Technologies. More modern, more open. People actually seemed happy to be there, chatting in the break rooms, laughing during meetings. Daniel met me in the lobby personally, shaking my hand in front of the entire staff. This is Brandon Mitchell, our new Senior Vice President of International Operations. Some of you might know him from his work at Garrison Technologies. Brandon built the Singapore partnership that everyone's been talking about, and he's going to help us expand into the Asian market. The applause was genuine. No one here saw me as the boss's son-in-law. I was just Brandon, the guy who was good at his job. The first week was a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, and strategic planning sessions. Daniel gave me complete authority over the Singapore transition, trusting my judgment without micromanaging every decision. It was liberating in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Elena and I existed in parallel during those first few weeks. We slept in the same bed but barely spoke. She went to her office, I went to mine, and we avoided the elephant in the room through mutual agreement. The breaking point came when Richard sued me personally for theft of trade secrets. The lawsuit was frivolous, designed more to drain my resources and damage my reputation than to actually win in court. But it forced the issue Elena couldn't ignore. He's suing you, Elena said, holding the legal papers when I got home one evening. I know, my lawyers already have a response prepared. Brandon, this is insane. We need to settle this before it destroys both families. Your father destroyed our family when he fired me for taking a vacation. This is just the fallout. You're being stubborn. No, I'm being principled. There's a difference. Elena threw the papers at me. You want to know what I think? I think you wanted this. I think you were looking for an excuse to leave Garrison Technologies, and Dad gave you the perfect one. Now you get to play the victim while you steal his clients and ruin his reputation. Is that really what you think? What else am I supposed to think? You moved on awfully fast for someone who supposedly loved working there. I picked up the papers from the floor, smoothing them out carefully. I stayed for 6 years, Elena. 6 years of putting your father's company ahead of our marriage, ahead of my own health, ahead of everything. And the moment I tried to take 1 week for us, he threw me away. If that's love, I don't want any part of it. He's my father, Brandon. And I'm your husband. Or at least, I thought I was. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. Elena had her father's lawyers draw them up, which felt appropriate in a twisted way. Richard Garrison was finally getting what he wanted, me completely removed from his daughter's life. I didn't fight it. What was the point? Elena had made her choice, and I'd made mine. We split the assets cleanly, the house sold within a month, and by Christmas I was living in a downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the harbor. Kerrigan Industries thrived. The Singapore deal expanded into 3 more countries, bringing in revenue that exceeded even Daniel's projections. Richard's lawsuit was thrown out with prejudice, and Garrison Technologies lost 2 more board members who joined Kerrigan, citing concerns about leadership stability. I heard through industry gossip that Richard had a breakdown at a board meeting, screaming about betrayal and loyalty until security had to escort him out. The board forced him into early retirement 3 months later, installing a new CEO who immediately tried to rebuild bridges with former employees. Too little, too late. Elena sent me one email after the divorce was finalized. It was short, just 3 sentences that somehow said everything and nothing. I hope you're happy with your choices. Dad had a heart attack last week. He's stable, but the doctors say the stress didn't help. I stared at that email for a long time, waiting to feel guilt, remorse, anything. But all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying Richard Garrison's expectations. Tired of being blamed for standing up for myself. Tired of the whole mess. I didn't respond. 6 months after the Paris phone call, I was sitting in Daniel Kerrigan's office, reviewing expansion plans for our European operations. "You know what I like about you, Brandon?" Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. "You understand that business is business, but you never forget the human element. Richard Garrison spent so long viewing people as assets that he forgot they were actually people with lives and needs and breaking points. I almost became him," I admitted. "Those 6 years, I was so focused on proving myself that I stopped living. But you didn't. You took a vacation, got fired for it, and refused to let someone else's dysfunction define your worth. That takes courage." I thought about that terrace in Paris, about the moment I laughed instead of begged, about choosing myself for the first time in 6 years. "It wasn't courage," I said. "It was just being tired of being small." Daniel smiled. "Sometimes that's the same thing." That evening I stood on my apartment balcony, watching ferries cross the harbor in the fading light. My phone buzzed with messages from team members, friendly check-ins and work updates from people who actually seemed to like me. No demands, no guilt trips, just human connection. Somewhere across the city, Elena was probably having dinner with her father, listening to him complain about how I'd ruined everything. Part of me wondered if she ever questioned the narrative, ever considered that maybe, just maybe, Richard had been wrong. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd learned something important in Paris. You can't make people value you. You can only decide what you're willing to accept. Richard Garrison had shown me exactly what he thought I was worth. I'd simply believed him and acted accordingly. My wife's father thought he was teaching me a lesson when he fired me for taking my first vacation in 6 years. He thought he was showing me who had power, who made the rules, who controlled my future. But what he actually taught me was that I'd been giving him that power all along. And the moment I stopped, everything changed. These days, I take 6 weeks of vacation every year. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I finally understand that the quality of your life isn't measured by how much you sacrifice for other people's dreams. It's measured by how much you're willing to fight for your own. And if that makes me a lazy pig in Richard Garrison's eyes, I can live with that. If you found this story valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories about standing up for yourself and refusing to accept other people's limitations. Leave a comment below about a time when you had to choose between loyalty and self-respect. What did you learn from that experience? And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things by simply refusing to be small. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is enjoy a glass of wine in Paris while your old life burns down behind you. And sometimes that's exactly what you need to build something better.